Today's webinar on the Lower Thames Crossing Design Refinement Consultation. Today we're going to be providing you with an overview of some of the proposed refinements to the Lower Thames Crossing, with a particular focus on refinements in Kent. So to be clear, this isn't an exhaustive overview of every single proposed refinement. Rather, we're providing you with an overview of some of the more notable ones made to our proposal since our supplementary consultation earlier on this year. So we'll start off today by briefly introducing ourselves. My name is Sarah Walker and I'm the Communications and Engagement Lead for Highways England on this project, and I'm going to be moderating today's webinar.
Hello everyone, my name's Steve Roberts. I'm the Engineering Design Lead for the Lower Thames Crossing, and I'll be running through many of our proposed refinements today, as well as helping to answer your questions a little later on.
Hi, I'm Gary Hodge, Technical Lead for Lower Thames Crossing, and I'll be helping to answer many of the questions today.
And we've also got Duncan and Faith with us today, who you can see on camera throughout the webinar. They are British Sign Language interpreters and will be providing sign language translation for those in attendance who are deaf or have hearing impairments. Should you wish to expand the view of the BSL interpreters at any time, simply hover your mouse over their camera and click the button to expand. Similarly, should you wish to turn off the BSL interpreter video, then hover your mouse over their camera and just click the X. Lastly, our colleague David is helping us today behind the scenes to ensure that this webinar gets to your screens and runs smoothly. So in case of any technical difficulties, you may hear one of us asking for his help to progress the webinar onwards. So today we're going to provide you with an introduction to the Lower Thames Crossing project and give you an overview of why we're consulting again. We'll also let you know how to find out more information and how to submit an official response to the consultation. At the end of today's session, we'll be holding a question and answer session where we'll be taking and answering your questions about the refinement consultation, and we're going to show you how to do that right now. We're looking to focus today's Q&A session on the design refinement consultation. So if you've got any questions about the project more generally that fall outside of that, then please email info@lowerthamescrossing.co.uk. Should you have any questions pertaining to any land interest that Highways England has written to you about, then do contact us directly using our telephone surgery service. And the number for that is 0300 123 5000. So we're going to take a moment now to let you know how you can submit a question to today's Q&A session. Depending on how you're watching this webinar, your view may look like one of the three options on the screen. Just look for where the question area is, indicated above by the red circle. That's where you type your question. We'll be getting to your questions after we run you through some of the proposed refinements. Your questions will only be visible to you and the project team here on the webinar. We may not have time to get to all the questions today, so if your question isn't answered, we'd encourage you to book a callback using our telephone surgery service. Callbacks can be booked on our website, and that's www.lowerthamescrossing.co.uk/design-consultation, excuse me, or you can call us on 0300 123 5000. So to start us off today, we're going to be providing you with an overview of the project with a short video, and then we're going to dive straight into the refinements being proposed in this consultation. We're going to start that video right now. So just to recap on that video, the Lower Thames Crossing is a proposed new road connecting Kent, Thurrock and Essex through two 2.6-mile tunnels beneath the River Thames. It would almost double road capacity across the river east of London, boosting local, regional and national economies, while offering new connections, better journeys and, of course, fewer delays. On the south side of the River Thames, the new road would link to the A2 and M2 in Kent. On the north side, it would link to the A13 in Thurrock and the M25 in Havering. We're proposing a number of refinements to the design of the Lower Thames Crossing based on feedback received during previous consultations, engagement with our stakeholders, and of course, ongoing design work. We've now also got a better understanding of some of the technical constraints, including new information about existing utilities. The proposed refinements include a reduction to the overall size of the development boundary, minor changes to highways design, updated paths for pedestrians, cyclists and horse riders, fewer utilities diversions, more detailed landscaping proposals, and further developed ecological mitigation measures. You can respond to the consultation in several ways, either through our website, by post or by email. If you know anyone who doesn't have internet access, they're also able to call us on 0300 123 5000 to provide a response to the consultation over the phone. We're now going to go straight into the refinements with a short video that'll show you the changes south to north along the section of the route we're covering today.
Based on feedback from previous consultations, engagement with our stakeholders, design, development and new technical data, we're now proposing a number of refinements to the design of the Lower Thames Crossing. We're currently holding a further round of consultation, which means that until 11:59 p.m. on the 12th of August 2020, you'll have the opportunity to view and comment on those latest proposals. Your feedback is vitally important in making sure we get all aspects of design, construction and operation of this scheme right, and your responses will play a fundamental role in firming up our plans for the Lower Thames Crossing. In this video, I want to give you a brief introduction of some of the key design refinements that we're proposing in Kent. Following the feedback you gave us during our supplementary consultation, we've continued to work closely with stakeholders, including utilities companies, to reduce our impact on environmentally sensitive locations. We've now refined the land required for utility diversions in the A2 area that would reduce the impact of our work on Shorn and Ashenbank Woods, Jeskins Community Woodland and around Clay Lane Wood. Because we've refined the design of utility diversions in areas along the route, it means our overall development boundary, which is the land we need to construct the scheme, has reduced in size. This means that the number of properties inside the development boundary has nearly halved. You can see more details on this in our consultation documents online and in our virtual exhibition. If your property is in or near the development boundary, we will have written to you directly, but if you've got any questions, please do get in touch. Around the M2-A2 junction, we further developed our landscaping proposals and made some key refinements to structures over the route. Over the A2, Brewers Road and Thong Lane, green bridges would be slightly realigned to combine green spaces at each location and provide better connectivity for the landscape, ecology and habitats. We're proposing a new electricity switching station at Thong Lane. This would be required to distribute electricity to all new and existing smaller substations along the Lower Thames Crossing route. The position of the Lower Thames Crossing to the south of Thong Lane would also be raised between 2 and 3 metres to improve driver visibility. Thong Lane Green Bridge over the Lower Thames Crossing would also move approximately 20 metres north to avoid clashing with a proposed gantry and allow us to plant more trees, something that was previously restricted by overhead electrical cables. The bridge would also be raised by less than half a metre due to the Lower Thames Crossing carriageway realignment. We're proposing a new informal parking area to the east of Thong Lane. This would help ease the current parking issues along Brewers Road and help increase capacity for those visiting Shaun Woods Country Park. We've also refined and updated our proposals for new walking, cycling and horse riding paths in the vicinity of the Lower Thames Crossing. We've carried out detailed noise assessments and have identified locations along the route where noise barriers could be used to reduce the sound of traffic for local communities. Further details on these proposed locations of the noise barriers can be found in our consultation documents and maps online and in our virtual exhibition. These are just some of the design refinements we're consulting on. To view and comment on all the latest proposals, please visit the Lower Thames Crossing website, explore our online exhibition, and of course follow us on Facebook and Twitter for updates. This consultation is an important opportunity for you to have your say before we submit our development consent order application later on this year. So please do submit a response online, by free post, email, or simply by calling us. Thank you for watching.
Hello everyone, Steve Roberts here again. So to complement the video you've just watched, we'll now run through the refinements in a little more depth. We'll start off by covering some key themes regarding the development boundary, environmental impacts, landscaping and utilities. And then we'll dive into the refinements on a junction by junction basis. So we'll get started by showing you the development boundary. Okay, so on screen right now, we have the development boundary map. We've been able to reduce the amount of land required by 12.5% by refining and designing the utility diversions in some areas along the route. Within this revised development boundary, there's now some additional land that would be required permanently, whereas other areas like construction sites will only be needed temporarily, with any land being reinstated and returned to its owner once construction is complete. If your property is affected by the scheme, you should have been written to already. If you have received a letter, please feel free to give us a call to discuss it on 0300 123 5000. That's 0300 123 5000. Okay, on to environmental impacts now. So following feedback from our supplementary consultation, we've been able to refine the land required for utility diversions shown at supplementary consultation, and in doing so, we've been able to reduce the impacts to various wooded areas, particularly in the areas around the M2 and A2 junction. With regards to green bridges, we've improved our landscaping proposals, resulting in better opportunity for ecological connectivity. This means that since the green bridges feature plant life like hedgerows, trees, shrubs, grasslands in the design, it'll be more attractive for wildlife to use as a crossing point over the road. And finally, noise barriers. To help mitigate noise, we've introduced some noise barriers in area where higher noise levels and disturbance is anticipated. Onto landscaping. As we've progressed the design of Lower Thames Crossing, we've also developed more detailed landscaping proposals to mitigate the visual impacts of the project's above ground infrastructure. Since supplementary consultation, we've added more detail on the specific type of ecological mitigation proposed across the route, such as grassland, woodland, and further refinements around watercourses. We also provide updates on new landforms and some proposals for some new viewpoints. Turning now to utilities, we've continued to refine our proposals for utility diversions across the route and are now proposing some further changes to the position presented at supplementary consultation. Some of the more notable updates include the need for small substations along the route, as well as a switching station near Thong Lane Green Bridge over the A2, which I believe Sarah pointed to earlier in her presentation. The substations will be approximately 3 meters wide by 3 meters long and about 2.5 meters in height. The number and location of these substations will be confirmed following further design work and continued engagement with our stakeholders. Okay, let's now dive into some more the refinement south of the river. Just to be clear, this is not an exhaustive overview of every proposed refinement. Rather, we're going to try and provide you with an overview of some of the more notable refinements made to our proposals since we last consulted at supplementary consultation earlier this year. So on the screen right now is an image depicting the M2A2 junction as we presented it at supplementary consultation. And now we'll show what we're proposing for this design refinement consultation, and we'll switch between the two, so hopefully you can see the differences. So what you may have noticed there is that some of the differences include the addition of noise barriers, a change to utility diversions, and probably more notably changes to our planting proposals. So we'll go into that in a bit more detail next. Firstly, noise barriers. The first refinement we'd like to highlight is the introduction of some noise barriers, firstly near Thong Lane over the Lower Thames crossing. Secondly, alongside the M2A2 near the Inn on the Lake and Shornwoods Country Park. And along the M2A2 near Brewers Wood. You can see some of these indicated on screen as points 1A, 1B, 1C. Moving now to Thong Lane Green Bridge over the A2, the green space is just out of view on this image, but the green space will be amalgamated on one side of the bridge to improve the landscape and ecological connectivity. So, due to utility diversions required within Clay Lane Wood, the ancient woodland compensation in this area will be reduced, and as a result, we would increase the proposed ancient woodland compensation planting to the north on the edge of Gravesend as much as is reasonably practical. Landscaping in Brewers Wood and Great Crabbleswood areas would be designed to connect both woodlands and propose replacement open space land. And staying on the subject of woodlands, at Shornwoods, we've redesigned the block planting layout to better reflect the landscape and accommodate the proposed utility works. We've also reduced proposed ancient woodland compensation to the south of High Speed 1 railway due to a cultural heritage building and to maintain open space setting. This is due to the fact that fewer utility works are now planned in this area. As mentioned previously, there's moving on to utilities, a new switching station is required to distribute electricity to all new and existing smaller substations along Lower Thames Crossing route. We're currently working with the utility company on the final design that we submitted as part of our development consent order application. So aside from the switching station in this area, there are also a number of proposed overhead power line diversions and upgrades in the area of Riverview Park and Thong Lane, as well as a short extension to a gas diversion along Valley Drive. We've been working with our stakeholders, including utility companies, to refine our proposals and minimise the land required for works. This in turn reduces impacts on environmentally sensitive locations. So now we'll take a particular focus, look at the focus on refinements made from Thong Lane Green Bridge area. This is over Lower Thames Crossing. In terms of design, Thong Lane Green Bridge over Lower Thames Crossing is moving 20 metres north to avoid clashing with the proposed gantry and to allow for tree planting that was previously restricted by overhead power lines. The bridge would also be raised by around half a metre as a result of an alignment change, You can see this represented by point 1 on the image. We're also proposing that Lower Thames Crossing will be raised south of Thong Lane Green Bridge to improve driver visibility. This is shown as point number 2 on the image. Moving on to utilities in this area, as shown on the image on screen as point 1, we plan to have a substation located behind the southern tunnel entrance. Our landscaping proposals around this substation will help to integrate the infrastructure into the existing landscape and to mitigate the visual impact. We've also refined utility diversions in the area, as shown by point 2. Due to the proposed changes to Thong Lane Green Bridge over Lower Thames Crossing, we're seeking to move the overhead power line diversions in this area by around 235 metres to the south. This means it will move away from Riverview Park and closer to Thong. As shown as point 1 on this image, we've added a new parking area near Thong Lane Green Bridge. This will be easily accessible by residents of Gravesend. There'll be footpaths linking the proposed parking area to Shorn Woods. The new paths remain as shown in our proposals at supplementary consultation, which you'll see in the subsequent slide. So taking a look at changes to paths in the area, as a result of the Thong Lane Green Bridge over Lower Thames Crossing moving 20 metres north, the shared path on this bridge has also moved, and this is reflected on the map in the purple colour. So I'm just going to recap now on the refinements we've just covered. The map on screen is also included in your guide for those of you've got it. It's on pages 26 to 27 and 28 to 29 of the Design Refinement Consultation Guide. So number 2 on screen is the Thong Lane Green Bridge over Lower Thames Crossing, which has moved 20 metres north. Number 3 is the informal parking area to the east of Thong Lane Green Bridge. Number 4 shows where the alignment of Lower Thames Crossing has been raised south of Thong Lane Green Bridge over Lower Thames Crossing. Points 9 through to 12 help to show the utility upgrade works for existing overhead power lines. And point number 10 shows the location of the proposed new 33 kilovolt permanent electricity switching station off Thong Lane near the M2A2. Then we've got point number 13, which shows where landscaping would take place around a proposed substation. Points 14 through to 18 help to show where we're proposing to reconfigure woodland compensation. And finally, points 19 through to 22 show where we propose to place some noise barriers as part of our noise mitigation strategy.
Thank you, Steve, for that run through of the proposed refinements to the route. As was mentioned at the very start of this webinar, our goal today is to provide you with an overview of some of the more notable refinements made to our proposals since our last supplementary consultation. If you want to know more information on the proposed refinements, then I would suggest that you take a look at our website on www.lowerthamescrossing.co.uk/design-consultation, where you can access a digital copy of our consultation guide to the design refinement consultation, as well as a host of other consultation materials. So we're going to take a very short break now for about 3 minutes, and then we'll be right back to run through the questions with you that you've submitted before and throughout this webinar event. See you soon. So thank you to everybody for staying with us during that short break. As a reminder, the consultation runs until the 12th of August. Aside from this webinar, you can always find out more information on our website. And I'll remind you that address again, it's lowerthamescrossing.co.uk/design-consultation. Using the website or the Highways England Contact Centre on 0300 123 5000, you can schedule a callback with a member of the team to ask any questions that you may have regarding any of the refinements at all. You can also submit a request for printed consultation materials using any of these methods. So just a quick reminder now on how to submit a question if you haven't already done so to today's session. Depending on how you're watching this webinar, your view will look like one of the three options on the screen. Just look for where the question area is, indicated by the red circle, and that's where you type your question. We've had some come in already. We may, of course, not have time to get to everybody's question today, so if yours doesn't get answered, then we do encourage you to book a callback session using our telephone surgery service. And callbacks can be booked on our website, or you can call us on 0300 123 5000. Okay, so we're going to be focusing today's Q&A session on areas of the Lower Thames Crossing proposals that are south of the river. So we're going to begin with our first question, and I think we've had a couple of questions actually come in about the changes in the refinements in the Thong Lane area. Steve, this might be one for you. Steve, why has LTC been raised up where it crosses Thong Lane?
Okay, yeah, sure, I'll take that. So it is principally to improve visibility for drivers who are heading southbound from the direction of the tunnel, southbound to join 2A2. It's to improve the vertical alignment and the forward visibility for drivers. So the road LTC will still sit within quite a deep cutting at this point. And there will also be some noise barriers actually alongside Lower Thames Crossing for that stretch of the route.
And there's another question that's connected to this one. Why has the Green Bridge been moved further north? Oh, I mean, this person has asked, they're concerned about opening us up to more noise and air pollution, they're saying.
Right, sure. Yeah, it's interconnected. So one of the main reasons was that we had a gantry which has fixed signing and variable message signing for drivers who are heading northbound towards the tunnel. And there's a set distance back from the tunnel that the gantry has to be. And unfortunately, it was very close to the position of Thong Lane Green Bridge. So we decided to move the Green Bridge. And that also helped us with the alignment change, which I was just talking about. So there was a benefit there. The other benefit that it gave us actually was it allowed us to just reconfigure the power line diversion, which was previously restricting some of the planting that we could put on the Green Bridge. And by moving the bridge slightly north and moving the power line diversion south, it enabled us to provide better planting on the Green Bridge itself. So there were a number of benefits, and the two issues were interlinked: the visibility for the alignment change and the moving the bridge for the gantry.
Thank you for that, Steve. Clearly, some of the refinements in the Thong Lane area are attracting some interest. Gary, we've had quite a few questions about the parking area on Thong Lane, asking why is it needed, who's going to look after it, and who's responsible if there are things like fly tipping, or trespassers. Gary, can you help with that?
Yes, of course. I mean, I think as we point out in the video earlier on that you know, there's an informal parking area being created at just off to the east of Thong Lane. I mean, feedback from stakeholders told us about the Brewers Road had particular parking issues, so we thought this was an opportunity to help out with access to Sean Woods Country Park and the visitor centre. And the parking area will provide another point from which to explore the local area. The intention is that it's going to have around 50 car parking spaces, and that It'll initially be owned by Highways England, but we will be seeking a partner to maintain it in the longer term. And any fly tipping, trespassing, antisocial behaviour should really be reported to Gravesham or Highways England. I think that's the way that we're looking at it being managed initially. And I just want to say that it will be an informal area and designed, you know, with not with tarmac, but with gravel and being sympathetic within the area that it will be set.
Thanks for that, Gary. We've had a question come in, which I might answer actually. It's about working and social practices that have emerged from COVID-19 pandemics changing everybody, including easing some of the traffic flows on other Thames crossing. We're being asked whether that's going to change any of the benefits of the economics that LTC, that Lower Thames Crossing, might bring, and asking, is there a budget for the works that the public can see? So there's a couple of things that I can probably help with that. We know that COVID has had a huge impact, and of course it's had an impact even on the way that we're consulting at the moment. But some of the impacts it's having on the traffic levels, yes, they have been a short-term, quite significant impact, but it is an impact that we do foresee changing and returning to normal over time. The Dartford crossing still is the only way of crossing the Thames east of London. So COVID or no COVID, there's still a very strong business case for building the Lower Thames crossing, which of course will almost double road capacity across the Thames east of London, creating that new connection, and of course bringing all those economic benefits to both sides of the Thames, to both Kent and Essex and beyond. So in terms of the funding, the development phase of this project, which is the phase that we're in at the moment, is fully funded, and what happens, and this is completely normal, we will actually then seek full funding once we get permission to build the crossing. So I hope that helps the person who asked that question. Steve, I think there's a question come in now which perhaps you might be able to help with. Someone said they've got a general interest in the success of the scheme and also its impact on the local environment and its wider transport implications. Is there something some more detail you can add around that, Steve?
Okay, sure. Well, yeah, thank you for your interest. That's great. So obviously minimizing impact on the environment is one of our core scheme objectives. There's quite an extensive guide to update on the environmental impacts, which is on our website. So if you're particularly interested in the environmental side, there's quite a lot of information there, specifically pertaining to this design refinement consultation. Some of the highlights, I suppose, reduced impact on Shorn and Ashenbank Woods by refining our plans for utility diversions. That's quite a key theme, is this improvements and more refinement in our utility proposals, which has had some positive benefits to the environmental impacts. Better connectivity for non-motorised users, so for walkers, cyclists and horse riders. There's been some enhancements in our proposals there. And some better definition on sort of planting and landscaping proposals. And noise barriers. Haven't previously consulted on noise barriers, but we have got some more information to share on those now. So there's quite a lot in the environmental arena, and yeah, thank you again for your interest.
Thanks, Steve. Gary, a question for you now. Quite a local question from the Cobham area, asking how will these changes affect the Cobham parish and the Cobham parish and the boundaries of which stretch all the way to Ifield, Meetham, Luddlesdown. Can you explain how the changes might affect those two places like Luddlesdown and Cuxton?
Yeah, I mean, on the south side of the HS1, there's obviously one of the biggest things that we've done is we've reduced the temporary land because of the work that we've done with the utility companies. So there's a lot of land take being removed, and I think we most probably covered some of the points already in the webinar. But please do look at the guide, and particularly the interactive maps on the website, because you can zoom in on certain areas and get more detail of the specific areas by going onto the site. But none of the refinements in this consultation really have had any different impacts to what we had at supplementary consultation, and particularly at Ludstown or Cuxton. I suppose the refinement south of the highway speed line, we've reduced the ancient woodland compensation near Penhurst Road and Church Road due to the presence of there was a cultural heritage building, and that's really to maintain open space and fewer utility works needed there. There's a couple of substations near common service area. They're 3 meters by 3 meters in size, within an area of 5 meters by 4. Which, but I think to the south of HS1, really, we've actually most probably there's been a lot improvements because we've got a lot less utilities, temporary land.
Thank you, Gary. Hopefully that helps with that inquiry from the person who obviously lives near that area and has some concerns. We've had a couple of questions that have come in about land and property. We can't answer those individually, obviously, for reasons of confidentiality. We don't want to discuss individual cases in a webinar platform like this. But if you have got any questions about any impact on your land or property, or any of the correspondence that you've had from us or that you're worried about, please do get in touch using our telephone surgery service. I think we've reminded you of the number of that, and I'll do so again. You can also book that service on our website, and if you take a look at the exhibition, you'll find all the details of that there. So you can email us on info@lowerthamescrossing.co.uk, and I would encourage you as well to call us on 0300 123 5000. We have got a very dedicated land and property team who have got all the details and all the information at their fingertips, and hopefully will be able to answer your questions. So thank you to everybody who's asked questions about land and property. Moving on, Gary, a question for you. Someone has says they're actually worried about changes to their routine journeys on this side of the river. What difference will some of these changes make?
The south of the river, the refinements being proposed in this consultation shouldn't have any impact on traffic flows presented at our previous consultations. There have been no changes to the highway design or layout. All the connectivity is the same. The only change was obviously the vertical alignment at Thong Lane, which won't have any difference to route to work. There have been some minor changes at the A13 junction that will have a minor improvement on journey times. There's a couple of mergers up there that we've with the traffic figures changing with HGVs, we've actually had to change a couple of mergers up there. So that will help the journey times in that area. But I think the best thing to do here, actually, if it's a specific journey that you're looking at, it would be best to arrange a callback so that you could go through that particular journey in detail, and we'll get someone to actually explain exactly what the difference would be.
Thanks, Gary. And I think it's worth pointing out that as we progress further towards and into what could be the construction phase of this scheme, any impacts on the local network, we will make sure that they are communicated to communities, and we'll work closely with the local authorities to make sure that there's the minimum impact that's possible on everybody's day-to-day journeys. We do understand that a construction project like this is bound to have an impact on those journeys. Gary, another question here for you, this time about Dartford and about tolls. Can you confirm whether tolls will be the same as for the Dartford Tunnel, and whether motorcycles will remain free 24/7? And there's also another question that's connected to that. Why are you excluding L plate, so learner motorcyclists? They're allowed apparently on the Dartford crossing, so why the difference here? Gary, can you pick that up?
Yeah, I mean, the charging regime will replicate the approach that's applied at Dartford. I mean, the intention is that, will have the same charging within Lower Thames Crossing as they do at Dartford. So for local areas, there will be the reduced charging. The motorcyclist will be able to use the crossing free, the same as Dartford. The motorcyclist, it most probably be the lower speed motorcycle, which we'll most probably will restrict on the LTC, because it's a 70 mile per hour through a 7.3 kilometre tunnel, whereas Dartford is a lower speed limit at 50 miles an hour. So I think there will be restrictions. But for specifics on this, I'd recommend a call back and to speak to one of our operational team. There will be. We are planning to put restrictions on going through the tunnel, because it's 4.3 kilometres, and we don't want sort of the highest, the 70 mile per hour vehicles mixing with lower speed, or cyclists, horse riding, and those sorts of things. So there will be prohibitions within the crossing.
And it's ultimately done in the name of safety.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you, Gary. Thank you. Another question's come in now asking whether we've got this is about the environment, whether we've got an accurate record of the current wildlife distribution in the area surrounding the crossing, and for how long would Highways England continue to monitor after construction in order to assess the impact that the road and its construction has had on environmental mitigations and the effectiveness of the proposed refinements. Steve, is that one that you could pick up?
Yeah, sure. Yes, is the answer. We have some extensive surveys of current wildlife, both in the south and the north. I believe that information has been shared with relevant stakeholders, and certainly all that information will also be available as part of our development consent order submission later this year. In terms of how long we monitor, I think it depends on the particular species, habitats, etc. But to give you an example, I think for bats, the plan is to monitor at various intervals for something like the first 10 years post-construction. So yes, the monitoring and the surveying of wildlife is quite extensive.
Thank you for that, Steve. And I think it's worth pointing out that as we go towards submitting our development consent order application, a lot of that information about impacts on the environment will be clear for people to see, and the results of all the work that's been done to look at how we can minimise those impacts. So moving on, we have got a question here about the images that we've used in today's webinar and also in the other consultation materials, how they depict what the area is going to look like 15 years after completion. This person has asked that those of us on whom this has an immediate impact want to know what it's going to look like at completion, saying that some people won't be around to wait to see what it looks like 15 years later. Steve, is that something you can help with?
Yes, well, I hope they will be around to share the benefits of the project. I think that why are we showing images depicting on the scheme as it will look 15 years hence? I think that's really the main answer to that, I would say, is for consistency with what we've previously shown in previous consultations, so that you can compare like with like. Yes, we could have done some opening day images, but I think the intention really was to try and show the scheme as it will be once complete in the future, so to allow principally the planting to fully grow. So yes, the intention really is to show what the final product, if you like, is like once the planting has had time to mature. And so 15 years was what we decided to go with.
And that's a pretty standard way, isn't it, of presenting information like that across the industry? Yeah.
I believe so.
Thank you for that, Steve. That's really helpful. Gary, a question here for you about where is the excavated material in Kent going on the new scheme, as there seem to be very few places to put it now that viaducts are used, and is there an indicative volume of how much is going to be excavated in Kent and the lorry movements that would be required to move it around, and where it's on which routes it's going to be moved around? There's also a supplementary question to that asking, why is there a chalk storage area proposed?
Yeah, I haven't got the specific volumes actually off the top of my head, but the intention, obviously, there's the tunnel spoil is going to go out of the northern portal and be distributed around the northern portal. On the south side, what we've got, the spoil in the cutting, we'll try to reuse it on site when and where possible, because obviously it's more sustainable, and obviously it's cheaper for the contractor to do so. Any spoil material would then that needs to get off site would be transported to designated disposal sites by lorry, or alternative methods like river barges or rail. We're exploring the opportunity to stockpile excavated clean chalk from our construction work east and west of the southern tunnel entrance, and we're working with the Environment Agency because the length of time the stockpile may be present means that we may require an environmental permit, because it could be, I think we said in the guide up to 3 years. So we're working with them to try to get that in place. We're also creating what we call Chalk Park, which is a landscape proposal around the southern portal, which will reuse some of the excavated material. It's just to the south of the A226, and any of the good quality material that we can move into that area, that's what we will do. I think really, as far as that, that's most probably all I can say, except for there was a document in the supplementary consultation earlier this year, which actually does give a bit of information about our plans on how we're going to build LTC. I think it would be useful if anybody goes back to that particular document.
Okay, hopefully that's helpful. Thank you very much, Gary. We've heard quite a lot of talk about substations, power stations. Our questions come in. Gary, I don't know if you can help with this. What's the size of the power station at the top of Thong Lane?
There's the one at Thong Lane is, I think that one's, I've got the size off the top of my head. It's about
one of the smaller ones, I believe. I think we're talking a substation here, aren't we? And I think it's a 3 by 3 meter substation. I think they sit within a slightly larger compound area, 5 by 4 meters. I think that's the one that's referred to.
I think if it's the one that's just north of the A2, the one that was pointed out on the video, that one I think is actually slightly larger, Steve. I think
that is larger. If it's that one.
Yeah, which it's a switching station.
Yes, that's right.
And the purpose of the reason we've had to put it there is because in moving putting in the A2 junction, we've taken out the switching station there, so we've had to relocate it. It's a relocation of an existing one, but there will be the smaller, as Steve said, the 3 by 2s. There's one actually just to the north of that as well, but there will be some of those around the area that we will be putting in.
Thank you, both of you, for that clarity. Thank you. Another question, this time about trees. We've seen lots of visualizations of trees at 15 years old, but there's a question here about why are there no trees on wide verges? For example, park pale. I don't know if either of you know that specific area and can answer that? It's northeast of the M2 junction.
Yeah, I think.
Do you want to do that one, Gary?
Yeah, no, I don't quite to say this one. What we've shown, it's on. I think one of the images that was shown. There's sort of we are taking some of the trees on the north side of the verge there, and it's because of the utility diversion route through there. We had a supplementary consultation. We had a 65-meter corridor through there. But that's been with more detail and speaking to the utility companies about what we can and can't do. We've actually reduced that down to, I think it's 35 meters. And what we've shown in this particular image actually is the removal of the trees within that sort of corridor. But we will be looking at trying to reduce it even further and speaking to the utility companies, because obviously there's ancient woodland along the top there, and it's an AONB. So, I mean, you know, landscaping is one of the key elements we are consulting on during this consultation. So we would welcome any feedback on this at all. So please go and have a look at the site and the maps and the guide.
Thank you, thank you. And again, Thong Lane has come up again, asking us, will raising the level of the Lower Thames crossing at Thong Lane result in gantries being visible in the landscape? I don't know which one of you feels best qualified to answer that one.
Yeah, I'll take that. No, they won't be visible. We're still in quite a deep cutting at Thong Lane, where Thong Lane crosses our Lower Thames crossing. I believe it's of the order of 8 to 10 meters, perhaps slightly more. But no, the Lower Thames crossing will still be in a relatively deep cutting at that point, and so the gantry infrastructure should not be visible.
Thank you, Steve. And another environmental impact question here, saying that our environmental impact updates focus on the effect on the preliminary environmental impact report, not so much, if at all, this person says, on the actual effect on the environment. What's your response to that? Who wants to lead on that one?
Steve? Is that one you can handle? Or?
Sorry, yes, environmental. Yes, I think that you're right. I think if you're referring to the environmental impacts update document, perhaps it's that one that some of you have in your possession. Yes, it does refer back to the peer, but nevertheless, I think the environmental impacts are set out in quite a bit of detail in terms of what the impact of the changes that we're making. Does that help to answer the question?
And maybe it's worth just signposting that more information will be available in the environmental statement, of course, when we submit the application. So maybe that will help. Thank you, Steve.
Yeah, I think it's worth going back as well to the summary design refinement guide, which is also available on the website. I think does set the context of those impacts on the environment. I appreciate that the more detailed update refers a lot back to the peer, but yes, I think if you look in the design refinements consultation guide, you should see the context for those environmental proposal changes.
Thank you, thank you. The next question actually is one that comes up quite a lot on big projects like this. We're being asked, will the landscaping trees that we plant already be several years old and large when they're planted? Gary, I don't know if that's
I mean,
offering information on.
Yeah, I mean, the trees planting proposal for the environmental mitigation would typically make use of immature trees. Because transplanting larger and more established trees tends to be less successful. At sensitive locations, though, we would look at more mature trees if the assessment showed that this would help significantly reduce the impact. So I think it really depends on the site. But generally, we try to use the immature trees because there's a better establishment. So I think really it does depend on the location. We try to put the more mature trees in where there's a significant impact.
Yeah, understood. And that's something that we do across the industry, isn't it? Because, for that very reason, because it is more successful to plant younger trees. They have a greater chance of becoming established and actually making the difference that we want them to make. I think we've got time for a couple more questions. One's just come in asking us, there's a bit of concern about the land take north of the A2 alongside Shorn Woods, especially next to Park Pale. Which one of you wants to comment on that?
Well, this is, I think, linked with the one we had earlier. That's what I assumed it was actually. So it was the actual utility corridor on the north side of the A2 that we've said we've actually reduced the temporary land take in that area from the 65 meters to 35 meters. But it's just that I think in the image that we've shown in the new consultation, we've actually shown the land take or the trees taken out of it, whereas in the previous supplementary consultation, because we didn't at that stage we didn't know what we had to do with the trees. We left the trees in, although the land take was 65 meters. So I think that's most probably what this is about, so that we are in this current consultation showing the trees being removed along the north section, the north side of the A2, and it's purely for the diversion of the utilities. It's a gas main in particular, a very large gas main. It's about, I think they call it a 36-inch gas main. It's I think 914 millimeters, but it's a substantial gas main which currently runs along underneath the road, and we've had to move it with new legislation. You've got to keep it out of the road, so it has nowhere else to go but other than that area.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you. Another question has come in about smart motorways, about which we've all read a lot recently. The question is, with the risk that smart road technology holds, why have we not considered hard shoulders? I don't know if either of you is able to comment on that.
I can take this one. It's not a motorway. So we don't need hard shoulders. It's an all-purpose trunk road designed to the latest standard, which is GD 300, and so it will have technology, and it will have emergency areas, and we are looking at the spacing. They comply with the standard at the moment, but if after the stock take that the government recently did, if there's a change to that, we will look at meeting the new requirements. But it's an all-purpose trunk road with technology built to the latest design standards, and it will be safe.
And I think that's the important thing to remember. This isn't a motorway, as Gary says. It is an all-purpose trunk road, and as technology continues to evolve and design standards continue to evolve, it will be built in line with those latest standards. Thank you for clarifying that. I know it's a very complex area. So I think we've got a time just about for one more question, and this is about the charging regime, which we have touched on briefly earlier, asking, will the local residents discount scheme apply to both the crossings, so to Dartford and to the Lower Thames crossing, or just to the Lower Thames crossing? Are either one of you able to provide any information on that, or shall I offer it my best guess?
I don't know the answer to that one, actually. What about you, Steve?
I think it's intention that the local resident discount scheme will apply both to residents Thurrock and Grays Inn, and on a similar basis to Dartford. So I believe both schemes will benefit from that. Perhaps we ought to seek a further clarification, but yeah, I believe that is the case.
Yeah, I think that's right. There's some of the detail on this is perhaps still to be worked out, but we're continuing to keep that thought front of mind. I think that's about all we have time for. I'm just going to hold fire just for a couple of seconds in case any of my colleagues tell me that any more questions are coming in. But if not, we'll wrap up that Q&A session, if that's okay. And just remember, if you'd like to attend another webinar and have an opportunity to ask any further questions, I think the dates are on your screen now of the next 3 webinars. So do feel free to register for one of those, and you'll have an opportunity to answer further questions if you to ask further questions if you'd like to. So go to our website and, as usual, lowerthamescrossing.co.uk/design-consultation, where all the details of those webinars are. So as a reminder just on how you can respond to the consultation, you can do that through the website by post or by email. And if you know anyone who doesn't have internet access, then please do get them to give us a call or call on their behalf, and they can provide a response to the consultation over the phone. Thank you for that. Okay, that's about all we have time for today from myself and my colleagues, Steve and Gary, and our colleagues in the back room who've helped make the technology work. I want to thank you all very much for joining us this evening to discuss the proposals for the Lower Thames Crossing. I would encourage you to send in a response to the consultation. And in the meantime, please stay safe and have a lovely evening. Bye-bye.